The cabin groaned under the storm's fury, its wooden bones creaking like an old man's joints. John Carter stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in his tired eyes. 20 years of running into burning buildings, and now he couldn't even remember the sound of another human voice. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago. Then a sound. Not the wind, not the settling logs. Something scratched at the door, weak but insistent. His pulse spiked. No animal should be out in this. No living thing could survive that cold. Yet the scratching came again. Desperate. Pleading. John moved like he was still in uniform. Calm hands, quiet steps. The scratching had stopped, replaced by something worse. A whimper. High-pitched. Terrified. His breath fogged the glass as he peered out. First, just shadows and snow. Then movement. A shape. Golden eyes met his through the storm, blinking slowly. Not wild. Not feral. Intelligent. The German shepherd's fur was crusted with ice, her sides heaving. And beneath her, 2 small lumps of fur, barely moving. Her pups. John's throat tightened. That look in her eyes wasn't fear. It was calculation. She'd chosen his door. On purpose. It started with a black van and a lie about puppies. The moment Ryan Mitchell grabbed Lily's arm, her voice vanished, locked away by terror. For weeks, she screamed in silence. Until Max, the retired K9, didn't need words. He felt her panic in the tremble of her hands, saw the monster in her nightmares. And when Lily finally pointed at Ryan in court, Max's reaction confirmed the truth. This was the man who tried to steal her. Blankets. Warmth. The fire popped as John worked. His hands steady but his mind racing. The mother, Rio, he'd already named her, licked the pups frantically, her tongue rough against their thin fur. The smaller one, Frost, wasn't breathing right. John reached to help and got a growl that vibrated through his chest. Not angry, protective. He backed off, watching as Rio nuzzled life back into her baby. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, another sound. A faint whine from Ember, the darker pup, as it finally latched onto its mother. John exhaled. They'd live. For now. Then a creak from the porch. Too heavy to be the wind. The forensic team worked through the night. Ryan's sweat on the chains. His fingerprints on the food tins. But the smoking gun? A single blonde hair in Emma's grip, Lily's, from the abduction attempt. He kept souvenirs. Ava Reynolds told the press, her voice shaking. Max sat vigil outside the interrogation room, growling every time Ryan's voice carried through the walls. Dawn came gray and quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the world muffled in white. John checked the perimeter, Rio shadowing his every step. Then he saw them, boot prints. Fresh. Leading to the oak tree where he'd found that frayed rope days ago. The rope was gone now. In its place, deep gouges in the bark. Claw marks? No. Knife cuts. A message. Rio's growl started low in her chest, building to a snarl. She knew that scent. John's fingers traced the cuts, 3 vertical lines, 1 horizontal. A crude A. His blood turned to ice. This wasn't just some hiker. Someone was hunting. And they just declared war. The jagged scar along Max's flank told a story of violence, just like Lily's silence spoke of unspeakable fear. But together, they found a language beyond words, Max nudging Lily's hand when nightmares came, Lily tracing his scar with gentle fingers. Dr. Grant called it mirrored healing. 2 survivors, one teaching the other to trust again. When Lily finally laughed at Max's goofy ear flop, Sophia knew these wounds would become badges of courage, not chains of trauma. The truck ride home was silent. Rio pressed against John's leg, her body vibrating with tension. The pup slept in a makeshift nest of towels. John replayed the vet's words, malnourished. Worm burden. The females got old fractures. His grip tightened on the wheel. He knew men like Riggs. The kind who saw living things as property. As investments. The kind who'd come looking. The cabin came into view and John's stomach dropped. The front door stood ajar. Not broken. Unlocked. He never left it unlocked. Rio erupted in a frenzy of barking, her body blocking the pups. John chambered a round in his rifle. Someone had been inside. The cabin was a war zone. Overturned furniture, shattered dishes, and on the wall above the fireplace, A single word smeared in what John prayed was mud. Mine. Rio sniffed at the mess, her growl continuous now. The pups cowered behind her. John checked every room, every shadow. Empty. But the message was clear. Riggs had been here. Riggs knew. The satellite phone crackled as Deputy Miller's voice came through. John? We got a problem. Riggs filed a police report. Claims you stole 3 valuable dogs. Says he's coming to get them. John watched Rio lick Frost's face clean. Let him try, he muttered. The line went dead. Outside, an engine growled to life. The headlights cut through the twilight, blinding. John stood on the porch, rifle loose at his side. Rio beside him, teeth bared. The truck door slammed. Riggs was exactly as John imagined. Thick neck, cold eyes, hands that looked like they'd broken more than they'd healed. Those are my dogs, old man. His voice was oil on water. John didn't move. Your dogs. He nodded to Rio's scars. Funny. Vet says these look like cigarette burns. Riggs smiled, taking a step forward. Rio's snarl turned vicious. John raised the rifle. Take another step. I dare you. The silence stretched. Then tires on gravel. Deputy Miller's cruiser rolled in, lights flashing. The standoff had just begun. The cruiser's headlights painted Riggs in jagged shadows. Rio's entire body trembled. Not from fear, but from barely contained fury. John kept the rifle leveled, his finger resting beside the trigger. Deputy Miller stepped between them, hands raised. Nobody needs to get hurt tonight. Riggs smirked, nodding at Rio. That bitch cost me 5 grand. Those pups. He licked his lips. 50 each, easy. John's grip tightened. He saw it then, the exact moment Rio recognized Riggs' scent. Her lips peeled back in a soundless snarl. The pups whimpered behind her. Miller's radio crackled. Backup was coming. But not soon enough. Riggs took another step forward, boots crunching on frozen gravel. You really want to die over some mutts, old man? John didn't blink. Last warning. Rio lunged, not at Riggs, but to block the pups from view. Smart girl. Miller's flashlight beam caught the glint of metal at Riggs' belt. Knife? Gun? John's pulse roared in his ears. Then a sound from the trees. A twig snapping. Riggs' head whipped around. Something moved in the darkness beyond the headlights. Something big. Rio's ears pricked. A low growl rumbled from the woods. Not a dog. Not human. The forest had eyes tonight. The growl from the trees deepened. Riggs froze. Even Miller's breath hitched. John kept his aim steady, but his mind raced. Bear? Cougar? Then movement. A massive shape emerged from the pines. Not an animal. A man. Taller than Riggs. Face hidden under a hood. Rio's reaction was instant. Her hackles rose, but her tail gave a single hesitant wag. The stranger spoke, voice gravelly. Heard you got dogs that don't belong to you, Travis. Riggs paled. This ain't your business, Elias. The hooded man ignored him, turning to John. That shepherd's got K9 blood. Military lines. He nodded at the pups. And those? They're worth more than his whole operation. Riggs lunged for his belt. John's rifle barked. A warning shot that kicked up snow at Riggs' feet. Miller tackled him face first into the dirt. Don't be stupid. The hooded man, Elias, watched impassively. Rio inched forward, sniffing the air. John kept the gun raised. Talk. Fast. Elias pulled back his hood, revealing a face scarred by fire. I train dogs for the army. Riggs here steals them. Sells the pups to cartels as attack dogs. He nodded at Rio. She was one of mine. Went missing 8 months ago. Riggs spat blood. Liar. She's just a... Elias moved faster than John expected, pressing a boot to Riggs' throat. Say it. I dare you. Sirens wailed in the distance. Miller cuffed Riggs, but John's aim never wavered, now fixed on Elias. Prove it. Elias whistled, 2 sharp notes. Rio's ears shot up. She sat at attention, eyes locked on him. A trickle of recognition. Elias reached slowly into his coat. John tensed, but the man pulled out a dog tag. Her registered name's Valkyrie. Trained for search and rescue. He tossed the tag to John. The metal was warm. Engraved. V-247. Rio whined, nudging John's leg. The pieces clicked. She hadn't just escaped. She'd been stolen. And she'd run not just to survive, but to protect the evidence wriggling at his feet. The pups. Back inside, John barred the door. Rio circled the pups, licking Frost's bandaged leg. The sheriff had taken Riggs, but Elias' words lingered. He's got friends. They'll come. John checked the windows, his reflection gaunt in the glass. Behind him, Rio jumped onto the couch, her first voluntary contact with furniture. A small act of trust. Ember yipped, chasing her tail. Normal puppy behavior. Something he hadn't seen until now. John exhaled, rubbing his face. They were safe. For tonight. He reached for Rio's tag, then froze. The back was etched with coordinates. And one word. Kandahar. The nightmares came as they always did. Flames, screams, the child he couldn't reach. John woke in a sweat, to warm breath on his hand. Rio stared up at him, her eyes reflecting moonlight. Not judging, just there. He touched her head, fingers tracing the scars. You dream too, huh? She rested her chin on the mattress. First. Downstairs, the pups slept in a tangle of limbs. John checked his phone. One voicemail from Elias. Those coordinates? Meet me there tomorrow. Bring the dogs. I'll show you what Riggs was really after. The clock read 3:47 a.m. Too late to call. Too early to move. Rio's tail thumped once. She already knew. Morning light revealed paw prints in the frost. Not just the pups, but larger ones circling the cabin. John loaded the truck, Rio watching his every move. The pups tumbled in the snow, nipping at each other's ears. Normal. Healthy. A sound he'd never thought he'd cherish. Their first real play fight, complete with mock growls. Rio barked sharply, herding them toward the truck. She understood. They were leaving, maybe for good. John tossed the last bag in, eyeing the tree line. Nothing moved, but the feeling persisted they were being watched. He palmed his pistol. Load up, girl. Rio nudged the pups inside, then hesitated. Her gaze locked on the woods. A low whine. She'd smelled something. Dr. Bennett frowned at the coordinates on John's phone. This is up near the old mining tunnels. Why would she cut off as Frost nipped her stethoscope? Christ, they're resilient. She checked Rio's stitches. Her muscle memory's intact. Someone trained her well. John pocketed the tag. Elias says Riggs was breeding military dogs for other clients. The vet's hands stilled. You mean like, yeah? Outside, a truck engine rumbled. Too loud for a civilian vehicle. Rio's head snapped up. John peered through the blinds, a black SUV with tinted windows idled across the street. No plates. The passenger window rolled down, just enough to reveal the barrel of a rifle. Aimed at the clinic door. John hit the lights. Back door. Now. Dr. Bennett didn't argue, scooping up Ember. Rio herded Frost toward the exit, her body rigid. The SUV's door creaked open. John counted footsteps, 2, maybe 3 men. All moving fast. He barricaded the exam room door with a steel tray table. Call Miller. The vet's hands shook as she dialed. Rio pressed against John's leg, a steady presence. In that moment, he understood this wasn't just about protecting them. It was about being protected. For the first time since the firehouse, he wasn't alone. The clinic's front glass shattered. Rio bared her teeth. John cocked his pistol. Stay behind me. Glass shards crunched under heavy boots. John shoved Dr. Bennett and the pups into the supply closet, pressing a scalpel into her hand. Stay silent. Rio crouched beside him, ears flat. The intruders' voices carried gruff Spanish, then English. Check the back. The shepherd's worth triple if alive. John's blood ran cold. They weren't just after the dogs. They wanted Rio specifically. A shadow passed the exam room door. John braced, just as the clinic's back alarm blared. The men cursed. Tires screeched outside. Through the window, John saw the SUV peel away, but not before catching the logo on its door, a stylized wolf head. Cerberus K9. The safe house reeked of gun oil and stale coffee. Elias paced, tossing a file onto the table. Photos spilled out. Rio in military gear, a younger Elias beside her. She wasn't just stolen, Carter. She was taken back. He tapped a black and white image. Rio mid-leap, attacking a man in Middle Eastern robes. Kandahar, 2019. Best explosive sniffing dog I ever trained. Then she vanished during extraction. John studied Rio, now curled protectively around the pups. You're saying she imprinted on someone, had pups. Riggs found her, but she escaped again. Elias' jaw tightened. Those cartel boys? They're the least of your problems. The Taliban paid $500,000 for her, and they always collect. The motel bathroom light flickered as John cleaned Frost's reopened wound. The pup didn't whimper, just licked his wrist. Behind them, Elias argued on the burner phone. No, we don't involve the feds. Rio suddenly stiffened. A creak from the hallway. Too quiet for human ears. John reached for his pistol, but Frost was faster. The pup let out a piercing, unnatural howl. Not fear. A warning. The door burst open. A figure in black charged in, only to be intercepted by 25 pounds of furious German Shepherd puppy. Ember latched onto the intruder's ankle. Rio hit him center mass. John's bullet grazed his temple. The man collapsed, revealing a tattoo. The same wolf head. Cerberus. The intruder groaned, tied to a chair. Elias ripped off his balaclava, revealing a kid no older than 19. Talk. The boy spat blood. They just want the dog, man. The original dog. John pressed the gun to his knee. Why? A whimper. She can smell the new stuff. The chemists can't hide it from her. Elias went pale. Oh Christ. They weaponized her training. He turned to John. Rio can detect a synthetic opioid 100x stronger than fentanyl. The cartels are shipping it across borders in dog food bags. Frost nosed the intruder's pocket. John pulled out a phone. One text visible. Burn the pups. Keep the mother. The highway stretched empty before them. John drove blind, no headlights, following Elias' coordinates toward the Canadian border. In the back, Ember whined, pawing at Rio's side. John glanced back and slammed the brakes. Rio was panting, pupils dilated. Not exhaustion. Poison. Ember nuzzled a half-eaten beef jerky strip, the same gift left at the motel by their captive. John's stomach dropped. Elias. She's been doped. The ex-handler cursed, grabbing Rio's muzzle. They're doping her to trigger false alerts at checkpoints. She'll flag everything as drugs, then they move the real shipment during the chaos. Rio convulsed. John floored the gas. They needed a vet. Now. But the only one they trusted was 200 miles away with a target on her back. Dr. Bennett's farmhouse was dark. Too dark. John carried Rio to the porch, her breathing shallow. The door swung open before he knocked, revealing the vet clutching a shotgun. Inside. Now. The kitchen table was a makeshift oar. For bags hung from curtain rods. I googled you, Carter, she muttered, prepping a syringe. Decorated firefighter. PTSD discharge. She jabbed the needle into Rio's leg. Why's the DEA calling me about you? Elias tensed. You talked to them? The vet shook her head. But they did. She nodded to the living room. Two men in suits stood, badges gleaming. The taller one smiled. Mr. Carter? We'd like to discuss your dog's unique skills. The DEA agent's offer hung in the air. Give us the dog. Walk away clean. John stared at Rio, now weakly licking Frost's face. The pups sensed it too. Ember growled at the agents, tiny teeth bared. Elias stepped forward. She'll die in the field. The doping damaged her. Then we'll take the pups. The agent interrupted. Train them fresh. John's vision went red. Dr. Bennett's hand on his arm was the only thing stopping him from throwing punches. Then a whine. Rio staggered to her feet. She limped to the agents and sat at their feet. The message was clear. Take me. Spare them. John's throat closed. He'd seen that look before, on firefighters running into infernos. The barn door creaked as John slipped inside. The DA agents slept in the house, confident they'd won. Rio waited by the hay bales, eyes clear. The vet had faked her symptoms. Elias knelt, wiring a GPS tracker to her collar. It'll last 48 hours. Tops. John attached his firefighter beacon next to it. Long enough. The plan was suicide. Let the DA take Rio, track her to the cartel's lab, then burn it all down. Frost and Ember whined from their crate. John couldn't look at them. If this goes wrong, it will, Elias said simply. But she'd do it anyway. Rio licked John's palm once, then walked to the DEA van without looking back. Rain sheeted across the truck windshield as John watched the blip on Elias' laptop. Rio's tracker moved northeast, toward Detroit, toward the border. Then, at 3:17 a.m., it stopped. Not just stalled. Vanished. Elias cursed, recalibrating. Could be interference from... The laptop pinged. A new signal activated. Not Rio's. The firehouse beacon. It pulsed from an abandoned factory 10 miles away. John checked his gear. Axe, flares, the .45 he'd sworn never to use again. Frost and Ember watched from their carrier, ears drooping. They knew. John touched their heads. Bring her home, Elias muttered. Or die trying. The truck roared to life. Somewhere in that factory, Rio was waiting, or already dead. The smell hit first, chemicals and rotting meat. John moved through the shadows, following the beacon's pulse. Crates lined the walls, stamped Cerberus K9 certified training aids. Inside, dog toys laced with opioids. A forklift sat abandoned, its cargo, a cage, dripping fresh blood. John's stomach twisted. Then, a whimper. Not Rio. Pups. Dozens of them, crammed in pens, their eyes glassy with drugs. At the far end, a man in a lab coat adjusted an 4-bag, attached to Rio. She convulsed on a metal table, her paws strapped down. The DA agent stood beside him, laughing. Another 20 minutes and she'll be ready for transport. John raised his gun. The lab coat turned. Ah, the fireman. The lab coat's latex gloves snapped as he pulled them tight. We wondered when you'd come. John's finger hovered over the trigger, but the DEA agent already had his Glock trained on Rio's head. A whimper came from the pen behind them, dozens of drugged puppies, their paws bleeding from wire floors. The scientist chuckled. Beautiful, isn't it? We breed them addicted. Makes them compliant. Rio strained against her straps, foam dripping from her jaws. The agent smirked. One move, Carter, and I put her down like the gunshot rang out. The agent dropped. Elias stepped from the shadows, smoke curling from his barrel. Miss me. The scientist scrambled backward as Elias advanced. You were supposed to be in Detroit. Elias kicked the agent's gun toward John. Had to see this hellhole for myself. His gaze locked on the 4 pumping drugs into Rio. Cerberus was your operation. You train these dogs. Elias' jaw tightened. For search and rescue. Not this. He ripped the 4 from Rio's leg. John covered them, scanning for more guards. We need to move. A sudden crash, Frost and Ember tumbled from the vent above, landing in a flurry of growls. Elias cursed. You brought the pups? John scooped them up. They chewed through their carrier. They weren't staying behind. Ember wriggled from John's grip, darting toward the scientist. The man laughed until Frost limped after her, trailing something from his mouth. Decord. The explosives training wire Elias had shown them in the truck. The scientist's eyes widened. No, Ember lunged, clamping onto his wrist. Frost dragged the cord's frayed end across exposed wiring. Sparks flew. Elias yanked John backward. Down. The explosion wasn't fire, it was sound. Every dog in the facility howled in unison, a deafening chorus that shook the walls. Alarms blared. Rio, freed from her straps, staggered up and joined the song. Not pain. Not fear. A battle cry. The doors burst open. Guards poured in, only to be met by 37 suddenly very awake, very angry dogs. Chaos. Snarling fur and screams. John lost sight of Rio in the melee, then saw her atop a guard, her jaws locked on his gun arm. Frost and Ember herded the other pups toward the exit, nipping at their heels like tiny sheepdogs. Elias grabbed the scientist by his collar. Shut it down. The man sobbed. I can't. The failsafe, a new sound cut through the noise, a helicopter. John's blood froze. The Cerberus logo on its side. The scientist whimpered. They'll gas the whole place rather than let you leave. Elias shoved him toward the door. Then we move faster. Rio appeared at John's side, blood on her muzzle. She nudged him toward the pups. Her message was clear, save them first. The first canister shattered through the skylight. Yellow mist billowed across the room. Dogs collapsed mid-stride. Elias cursed, yanking his shirt over his nose. Fentanyl analog. One breath and Frost stumbled. Then Ember. John grabbed them, heart hammering. Rio dragged a soaked towel to him with her teeth. John wrapped the pups, their breathing alarmingly slow. Elias kicked open a service door. Here! The helicopter spotlight found them. A rifle cracked. Elias grunted, clutching his shoulder. John returned fire blindly. Rio leapt, knocking the scientist into the gas cloud. His screams were cut short. The mist reached them. John's vision blurred. The last thing he saw, Rio herding the surviving pups toward the trees, Frost and Ember limp in her jaws. Then darkness, beeping, white lights. John's lungs burned as he gasped awake. Hospital. A familiar face swam into view. Deputy Miller. Welcome back, hero. John's voice was raw. The dogs. Alive. Miller nodded to the window. Outside. Rio lay in a patch of sun. Frost and Ember wrestling at her feet. Elias made it too, singing like a canary to the feds. John tried to sit up. Cerberus. Miller's smile faded. Gone. The gas. It wasn't just for dogs. He handed John a newspaper. The headline, 37 dead in alleged drug lab explosion. No mention of the puppies. No mention of the guards. John's hands shook. Rio scratched at the door. Miller let her in. She jumped onto the bed, pressing her face to John's chest. They'd won. But the cost? Unseen. Unspeakable. The cabin smelled of pine and gun oil. John watched Frost chase his tail, the leg healed crooked but strong. Ember dozed by the fire, belly full for the first time in her life. Rio's head rested on John's knee, her breathing even. The TV droned, no survivors found at the Cerberus facility. John muted it. The official story was clean. Too clean. His phone buzzed. Elias. They're coming for us. Not the cartel. Our own side. Pack up. John stared at Rio's scarred muzzle. She licked his wrist. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. Not Miller's cruiser. Not Elias' truck. John reached for his rifle. Rio was already at the door, lips curled. Some wars didn't end. They just changed battlegrounds. Black SUVs. 3 of them. Men in unmarked tactical gear fanned out across the yard. John counted 6, no, 8, through the scope. Rio's growl deepened. Frost and Ember hid under the couch, sensing the danger. A megaphone crackled. John Carter. Come out unarmed. We just want the dog. John chambered around. Like hell. The first flashbang shattered the living room window. Rio barked, not in fear, but command. Frost and Ember bolted upstairs to the panic room John had built. Glass rained down. Boots stomped the porch. Then a new sound. Engines. Not SUVs. Motorcycles. Elias' voice crackled through John's earpiece. Back door. Now. Gunfire erupted. Not aimed at the house. At the feds. Rio nipped John's sleeve. Time to run. The forest swallowed them whole. John ran. Rio at his heels. Frost and Ember tucked in his pack. Behind them, the cabin burned. Elias' bike lay overturned. Its rider nowhere in sight. Gunfire echoed. Then silence. John's breath came in ragged gasps. Rio nudged him onward. They reached the river and froze. Elias stood waist-deep, blood streaming from his side. Took you long enough. He tossed John a set of keys. Safe house. 20 miles north. John hesitated. You're not coming? Elias grinned, loading his pistol. Somebody's gotta hold the bridge. The first SUV crashed through the trees. Rio whined. Elias cocked his gun. Go! John plunged into the icy water. The last thing he heard as the current took them. Elias singing off-key, gunshots punctuating every word. The cabin was smaller, colder, no electricity. John barricaded the door, his hands numb. Frost and Ember huddled together, shivering. Rio shook water from her coat, then froze, ears pricked. John followed her gaze. Footprints in the mud outside. Fresh, not theirs. The fireplace held cold ashes. And a folded note. John's blood turned to ice as he recognized the handwriting. Miller's. They're watching the border. Head south. I'll meet you at the place we drank coffee that time. Rio sniffed the paper, then growled. John burned it. Miller had saved them before. But that was before the feds got involved. Outside, a twig snapped. Rio positioned herself between the pups and the door. John raised his rifle. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford anymore. The safe house floorboards creaked under John's weight as he approached the window. Outside, the woods were too still. No birds. No wind. Just the distant hum of an engine idling. Rio's nose twitched. She smelled gunpowder. Miller's note had been specific, the place we drank coffee. The diner outside town. Neutral ground. But the footprints outside weren't Miller's. Too small. Too deep. A woman's boots. John's hand hovered over Frost's head. The pup trembled. Ember let out a soft whine. Then a knock. Not on the door. On the window. Dr. Bennett's face appeared, blood trickling from her temple. Open up, Carter. They're coming. She collapsed inside, her lab coat torn. They have Miller. John barred the door. Who? The vet's hands shook as she injected something into Rio's flank. Task Force. Classified. They think you're a cartel asset. Frost sniffed at Bennett's pocket and pulled out a familiar dog tag. V-247. Rio's military ID. Miller gave me this. Said it's your only bargaining chip. Outside, engines roared closer. Bennett met John's eyes. There's more. The pups, their blood work. I ran tests after the lab. She swallowed hard. They're not just drug detectors. They're carriers. Their DNA was spliced with something unnatural. A spotlight flooded the room. A megaphone blared, Carter. Send out the dogs or we burn it down. John's grip on his rifle turned white-knuckled. What did they do to them? Bennett clutched Ember close. Their saliva contains a synthetic compound. Undetectable. Untraceable. You could smuggle it across borders in their blood. Rio snarled as the first bullet shattered the kitchen window. Frost yelped, scrambling under the table. Bennett grabbed John's arm. They don't want to kill the pups. They want to harvest them. The wall exploded inward. Smoke grenades rolled across the floor. John scooped up Frost with one arm, firing blindly with the other. Rio lunged at the first shadowy figure through the door, then collapsed, convulsing. Trank dart. Bennett screamed. The last thing John saw before the gas took him. A black boot kicking Ember aside like trash. Cold metal against his wrists. John blinked awake in a concrete cell, his head pounding. No windows. No door handle. Just a mirrored wall, two-way glass. Frost lay limp in his lap, breathing but unconscious. No sign of Rio or Ember. Then a speaker crackled. Sergeant Carter. Welcome to your debriefing. John lunged at the mirror. Where are my dogs? The voice continued, calm. Valkyrie is unharmed. The specimens are being prepared for transport. John's blood ran cold. Specimens. The mirror flickered, becoming transparent, revealing a lab. Ember strapped to a table. Rio in a cage, foaming at the mouth. And behind them, Miller, in a crisp suit holding a syringe. Sorry, John. National security trumps fireman's honor. The cell door hissed open. Miller stepped in, flanked by guards. You were never supposed to get involved. John spat at his shoes. You used me. Miller sighed. We used her. He nodded at Rio. Perfect drug mule. Then you had to play hero. He tossed a file on the floor. Photos of Frost and Ember's littermates. All dead. First-gen carriers didn't survive extraction. But these two. He smiled. Gold mines. John's chains rattled. They're just pups. Miller crouched, voice low. They're patriots. One drop of their blood can tranquilize an entire village. No smell. No taste. Outside, Rio began slamming against her cage. Miller stood. Enough sentiment. Time to choose. Help us train them, or watch them die like the others. The lab door opened. John, unchained but guarded, stepped inside. Rio's cage was reinforced steel, her muzzle strapped shut. Frost and Ember were in separate glass enclosures. Ember hooked 2 and 4, Frost whimpering in a corner. A scientist adjusted a machine. Prep the female for milking. We need her antibodies first. John's fists clenched. Miller handed him a shock collar remote. Prove your loyalty. John stared at it. Then at Rio. Her eyes locked onto his, not pleading. Waiting. He exhaled. Pressed the button. Rio pretended to convulse, howling dramatically. The scientists chuckled. Miller nodded, satisfied. John's fingers brushed the real weapon in his pocket. Bennett's stolen scalpel. Lights flickered. The scientists frowned. Then darkness. An alarm shrieked. Glass shattered. John moved, not toward the door, but the cages. The scalpel made quick work of Frost's lock. The pup didn't hesitate. He bolted straight for the main power box, chewing through wires like they were treats. Bennett's training paid off. Ember, freed next, leapt onto the nearest guard's leg, her tiny teeth finding flesh. Chaos erupted. Rio's cage burst open, not by John's hand, but by her own. The muzzle straps hung loose. She'd been playing dead. Miller reached for his sidearm. Too slow. Rio hit him like a freight train. John didn't watch. He was too busy wrestling a guard for his rifle. Frost, now a blur of white fur, herded scientists into a storage closet. Ember disabled the IVs with her teeth, freeing other test subjects, cats, rabbits, a terrified beagle. Rio's snarls and Miller's screams filled the air. Then a single gunshot. Silence. John turned. Rio stood over Miller's body, blood dripping from her jaws. Not his. Hers. A bullet had grazed her shoulder. Miller's pistol lay just out of his lifeless fingers. John scooped up Frost and Ember. Time to go. Rio limped after him, pausing only to nudge Bennett's scalpel from the floor into her mouth. They weren't done yet. Gasoline fumes stung John's eyes as he doused the lab's servers. Frost and Ember waited by the exit, Rio guarding them. Bennett's voice crackled through the earpiece, "Hello's ready." 2 minutes. John lit the match. The explosion wasn't just fire, it was justice. They ran through smoke-filled halls, past cells of freed animals. The rooftop helipad loomed ahead. Bennett waved frantically from the chopper. Gunfire erupted behind them. John shoved the pups into Bennett's arms, turning to cover Rio, but she wasn't there. She stood at the stairwell door, ears pricked. More prisoners below. John screamed her name. Rio looked back once, then vanished into the smoke. The helicopter lurched upward. Frost and Ember whined, paws against the glass. Below, the lab burned like a dying sun. John's hands shook. Bennett squeezed his shoulder. She chose this. Then a sound cut through the rotors. A howl. Not pain. Not fear. A battle cry. From the tree line, a streak of black and tan burst forth, Rio, leading a pack of freed animals into the woods. Alive. Unbroken. Frost yipped in recognition. Ember howled back. John let the tears come. As the chopper banked south, he made a promise to the wind, "Run fast, girl. We'll be waiting."